eyewitness account of the chaos at the White House Correspondents Dinner shooting, gun control lawsuits lingering, America's talking, and Illinois State Representative Patrick Sheehan discussing violence against law enforcement and more. This is the Center Square Daily for Monday, April 27th, 2026. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. The California man accused of charging security and shooting a Secret Service officer at the White House Correspondents Association's dinner Saturday night will appear today in federal court. Amid other charges, 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen faces 2 counts of using a firearm during a crime of violence and 1 count of assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. President Donald Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, and members of Trump's cabinet were at the event and were rushed out of the banquet hall of the Washington, D.C. Hilton, which is less than 2 miles from the White House. The Center Square, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief Sarah Roderick Fitch was also there. We'll be talking with her in just moments. And as another would-be assassin attempts political violence at a high-profile event involving the president and many of his cabinet members, some are calling for more gun control, but others are saying that's not the issue. Acting U.S. Attorney Todd Blanche Sunday on CBS's Face the Nation was asked about whether new laws are needed to prohibit people from carrying firearms across state lines on trains. He said the suspect purchased the firearms in the past couple of years, and Blanche said he wasn't sure at that time how the guns arrived in Washington, D.C., but the acting U.S. attorney said the narrative isn't about changing the law or making it more restrictive for gun owners. The NRA says Blanche, quote, makes it clear one criminal action shouldn't be used to justify new gun control restrictions on law-abiding citizens. But while that debate continues about whether or not more gun control is needed, or whether it would even help stop such crimes, the U.S. Supreme Court is still mum on whether they'll take cases challenging gun control laws from various states. One of the major ones people continue to look for is Duncan v. Bonta, the challenge to a sweeping criminal prohibition in California on long lawful arms that gun owners say are owned by millions of law-abiding Americans. The Ninth Circuit issued their last order on the case in March of 2025, and that case has been bouncing around the federal judiciary since 2017. That is just one of several firearms-related cases at the nation's high courts, and they have yet to act upon. There's also a case out of Illinois called Viramontes v. Cook County that challenges the state's gun and magazine ban that's made it out of the lower courts on the merits. Now, the Viramontes case, filed originally in 2022, has also been relisted for conference several times, just as the Duncan case has. But yet there's another gun ban challenge out of Illinois still pending in the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. Now, this morning, as the U.S. Supreme Court announced their orders, none of those orders announced included any action on several of these high-profile gun control challenges. Hannah Hill from the National Gun Rights Foundation posted on social media, nothing on the 5 assault weapons ban and magazine ban cases currently pending before the Supreme Court, expecting another relist today, which would make conference number 14 for Duncan and Gator Guns. Now, again, the Duncan case has been relisted for conference more than a dozen times. What is a conference? That's where the U.S. Supreme Court justices go behind closed doors, evaluate a slew of different cases, and determine whether or not they're going to take a case or decide to hold it off for yet a later date. The Viramontes case, alongside Duncan, has been relisted several times. And while the court continues to determine whether they'll take any of those cases, more cases could be on the horizon. Firearms Policy Coalition is looking for adults aged 19 and 18 from Pennsylvania to join their litigation against that state's restrictions. FPC asks in a survey, would you like to apply for a Pennsylvania license to carry and carry a handgun in public for self-defense and other lawful purposes but can't due to the state's 21 and up age restriction? FPC then provides for a sign-up. You can expect more on that case down the line. Another case that's expected to be a focal point for the Second Amendment community is plaintiffs filing a motion for summary judgment in a case called Roberts v. ATF. It's one of the Second Amendment Foundation's 3 supported lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of the National Firearms Act registration requirements for short-barreled firearms and firearms suppressors. Now, until President Donald Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act last July, the NFA established a $200 tax on registration for certain classes of firearms, including silencers and short-barreled rifles. Now, after the One Big Beautiful Bill Act eliminated that $200 tax on those arms, the Second Amendment Foundation and its partners filed 3 lawsuits challenging the remaining registration requirements, saying without the tax, Congress's reliance on their taxing power is no longer justifiable. We'll be watching the federal judiciary closely on those cases and many others that are impacting your Second Amendment. And now joining us to share her eyewitness account of what happened Saturday at the White House Correspondents Dinner is our Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief, Sarah Roderick-Fitch. Sarah, thank you for taking time, and what a harrowing incident you had to experience and witness firsthand. Thankfully, you're safe. Thankfully, everyone else there is safe as well, and still one person recovering, a Secret Service officer recovering from what we understand. I want you to walk us through what you experienced from getting on the grounds and seeing the level of security up to the moment when you heard the commotion and realized what exactly was happening.
Yes. Well, kind of leading up to the event, there was a lot of security around the event, as you can imagine. It was right around it was off of Connecticut Avenue, which is one of the major streets here in D.C., and that was shut down. As I had to walk about 3 or 4 blocks, which was not exactly ideal. I was in a long evening gown, and it was raining, so it wasn't exactly ideal. So the evening maybe didn't start off so great. But as I walked up, there was a large gathering of protesters across the street from the hotel. So when I entered, we came up to a sort of a checkpoint. There was some security there. So I had to present my ticket, show them, okay, this is who I am. And, I belong there. And then just went into the hotel. And in the lobby area, there was sort of a photo station, and there were some receptions going on. And there was also guests that were coming in and out. I saw some people coming in with some pizzas. Obviously, they were in civilian clothing and all that. And anyway, and I noticed when I was up there, there were several levels there in the hotel before you get to the actual ballroom. And it was filled because there were over maybe 2,000 attendees at this event.
It's a high-profile event.
Yes, a very high profile.
There's a lot of activity. Yes. There's a lot of big names there. Mm-hmm. I would imagine it's similar to like the convention type of atmosphere, just instead of wearing business casual, people are wearing bow ties and evening gowns.
It was like kind of the equivalent to the Oscars for DC in a way, sort of along those lines. Or the DC people call it the nerd ball. That's what it's all, or nerd prom, nerd prom here in DC. That's what it's been always kind of referred to. But I did notice when I was in the lobby, I saw myself 3 protesters being dragged out before the event, and they looked like they had fit in. They had been in evening gowns and whatnot. I'm sure that I don't know, but don't know if they had tickets or if they were staying there at the hotel. I can't imagine that they had tickets because it was very, very difficult to get tickets. I mean, that was really, it was very challenging because this was really this was sort of an exclusive event because the president, this was like his first one that he was going to be speaking at. So there was really high profile. There was a lot of interest. So it would have been very challenging for someone to get a ticket, but it's very possible. But so they may have been staying there in the hotel. Yes, I'm unsure. That's actually a question that I have about some of those other people. So that was going on. And then there was like going through the similar, several layers. It said that there was receptions, there was a red carpet, there's photo stations. So there was hundreds of us, really thousands of us, just sort of, we were in close quarters. I mean, it was very, we were rubbing elbows. I saw Dana White, past him, all these people. There was a lot of congressmen and senators that were there as well. Governors, celebrities.
All over the place.
Yes. And we were just all together.
And you got to imagine, I mean, did you feel a sense of security other than just the checkpoint at the beginning to hand your ticket and get verified that way? What was the sense of security?
I did. I mean, you did. I mean, there was a lot of law enforcement present, as you can imagine. And outside, there was National Guard members. There was law enforcement everywhere. Some of them, were in suits, but they were everywhere. And then I got down to the lower level and then going through the magnetometers. just showing my ticket and just, it was very simple, easy, sort of 2 or 3 second process. Went downstairs, and then, they're in the ballroom. And then, so we were sitting there, I think past Cash Patel when I went in. So that was kind of interesting. And then about halfway through my salad, that's about as far as I got, was through my salad. I started hearing noises, loud noises, popping noises, definitely a lot of dishes, like clanging of dishes. There's just a lot of commotion going on. And I turned to behind me, just to kind of look at the crowd. And I saw, the whole entire ballroom just going down, just seeing everybody going down. And then immediately, the gentleman seated next to me, he lifted up the tablecloth and he just said, "Get down." He kind of pulled me down and went under the table right away. And I was under there for maybe 20, 30 seconds. And then I started hearing a lot of Secret Service agents, because I was near one of the entrances, and they started coming in, and I just started hearing them, shouting, "Go, go." I started hearing a lot. So I knew at that point, okay, maybe it's a little bit safer to come out now. So I sort of peeked out and sort of lifted my head up, and then saw more stuff happening, seeing all the Secret Service. I mean, I don't know how many, dozens and dozens of just agents coming in. And then I saw Secretary Kennedy being taken away. And he had a real pain look on his face. I was concerned that he had been shot. He may have been hit at the time, because the Secret Service agents were sort of dragging him. I mean, he really looked, he was just like shell shocked. It was a image that I'm never going to forget. And then I just noticed, tactical team Secret Service coming in, big guns, and just, and we, because I'm here at the White House and with the president, you realize they really only come out when something's really big is happening. So at that point, I knew, other than just hearing these sounds and everything like that this was a real situation. This wasn't just, protesters had gotten in. Initially, maybe I thought, okay, maybe this is just protesters and making a ruckus, and there was a scare. When I saw that,
it wasn't somebody popping balloons off in the corner or anything like that.
No, it wasn't. We knew that. And like I said, once I saw them coming in, I knew it was real. I knew this was a really serious threat. And then Secret Service agents, I saw them in the center of the room. Wasn't sure if somebody was shot over there, because they were walking on tables. I'm hearing dishes and everything else just, crashing on the ground and all of that. It was a lot of commotion, a lot of shouting, a lot of screaming. You can imagine. I mean, you said it was over 2,000 people in this ballroom, and it was, it was a huge moment. And so I was watching them, and they were pulling their protectees out. That's what they were going in to the center. I saw Hegstaff being removed. He walked out. He was very defiant when he walked out of that room. And, he was not even ducking. I mean, a lot of the other dignitaries, they were keeping their heads down and getting them out of there as quickly as possible. And the president did remain on scene. Now, was in a very secure location, because this hotel is used a lot for the president. And it was where Reagan was shot. It is sort of known, the nickname here in D.C. for years has been the Hinckley Hilton people, because there's two Hiltons. So that's kind of the running joke.
Hinckley being the man
who shot Reagan. Yes, who shot Reagan. So this hotel had already had some history with this. And so there were rooms that were very secure for the president, vice president, other members of Congress. The Speaker of the House was also there to go in. They held them for a long time. And the president did want to come out. We thought that this might resume. Not exactly sure how it was going to resume, but we were told they were trying to get it to resume. And then it really became impossible, because it just had become so, kind of chaotic, and people spread out.
And definitely a crime scene.
Yes, absolutely.
The suspect he's in custody. Charges are going to be filed today. He's reportedly going to be in federal court. But Sarah, as we see you standing in front of the White House there, what kind of conversations are you hearing? What kinds of security upgrades are you witnessing, if any, after Saturday's incident?
Definitely when I walked in, it was much more. Now, we also have today starting today is King Charles and Queen Camilla. So that is kind of compounding all of this. In the background now, I'm just hearing some music. They're practicing for their arrival. So that is in addition to what happened on Saturday night. So I can't really say, hey, is this a result of Saturday night thing, or if this is also because this is going to be this massive state visit. But the security is much more, complex. They are definitely much more on guard. Secret Service absolutely seems a little bit more tense, not as relaxed, a little bit more they're definitely more on guard. And here at the White House, we're close knit community here, the press corps here at the White House, and this hit us. This has impacted all of us. And when I walked in here today, if we didn't see each other Saturday night, or we got lost from each other, we just gave each other hugs. How are you doing? I've talked with the people in the press office, just making sure we're just all checking in on each other. How are you doing? I'm glad to see you're okay. And, I think it's really sort of, brought us even a little bit closer together, sort of a bonding ceremony, really between the administration and the press. I think this was sort of a really interesting, unique moment. But the press secretary, Caroline Levin, who is due any day now, she didn't intend on doing another press briefing, but she will be holding one today. So we anticipate learning maybe some more details about the investigation, possibly where it stands, and maybe other security upgrades. I know the president is really pushing hard for the ballroom, which would give the Secret Service more control over any sort of venue, because the hotel, they couldn't control, the hotel rooms, that was large. It's one of the largest hotels in the DC area. So it'll be interesting to see what we learned today from this briefing.
There's a lot of updates that we're going to be getting, and I encourage people to stay with thecentersquare.com, get the newsletter, and stay up to date. Sarah Roderick Fitch, DC Bureau Chief for the Center Square, greatly appreciate that you are safe and that others are safe. And, we do this job thinking we're going to be witnesses to history, but being that up close and personal as a witness to this historic moment, definitely something it's got to be kind of a bittersweet type of situation. So appreciate you sharing your story with us. And now it's time for America's Talking, with headlines from across the country, where you can find at thecentersquare.com. You can also find them in the description here below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the Center Square on any social media platform. Georgia voters can cast their ballots early for the May 19th primary races that feature a slate of heavy hitters seeking state and federal offices beginning today. The Center Square Associate Editor, Kim Jarrett, reports Georgia law requires candidates to receive 50% plus one vote to avoid a runoff, which is scheduled for June 16th. Incumbent Democrat Jon Ossoff's Senate seat is considered one of the most competitive in the country. Ossoff has no competition in his Democratic primary, but the Republican primary is a different story. U.S. Representatives Michael Collins and Buddy Carter are running. Derek Dooley is endorsed by Governor Brian Kemp. Also running in the Republican primary are Jonathan McCollum and John Francis Coyne III. There's also a gubernatorial primary and other statewide primaries for Republicans and Democrats to decide who's going to be in that November election. Amid fears that artificial intelligence technology is taking people's jobs, one new bill in California aims to determine the impacts on the labor force in the coming years. The Center Square California reporter, Madeline Shannon, reports Assembly Bill 2545 proposes to research the effects the rapidly developing technology has on California's labor force and jobs all across various industries. Now, that bill would establish a new program under the California Employment Development Department, which the bill calls the California Artificial Intelligence Worker Impact Data Assessment Project. The project would study the impact of artificial intelligence on the labor force and provide policy recommendations for how the state legislature can support workers impacted by AI. In Louisiana, Baton Rouge and state leaders Friday promised aggressive law enforcement responses after a shooting at the Mall of Louisiana left a 17-year-old girl dead and several others wounded. Speaking at a press conference alongside local and first responders, first-term Republican Governor Jeff Landry said the shooting appeared tied to the kind of neighborhood and gang-related disputes that have increasingly spilled into public places, endangering innocent people. The Center Square, Louisiana reporter Nolan McKendry reports Landry said the states would work with local, state, and federal partners to prepare a targeted warrant sweep focused on people tied to the shooting and others with outstanding warrants connected to that activity. An agreement has been reached by the Senate and House of Representatives in Florida on joint budget allocations, and dates are being set for a special session. The Center Square's contributor, Marilee Gasser, reports a memo to senators Thursday. Senate President Ben Alberton said that he and House Speaker Daniel Perez will be releasing a joint proclamation about Florida's special session in the next few days. It'll be scheduled to run May 12th through the 29th. The nearly 3-week-long session will include conference committees meeting from the first week, with all senators returning their districts after May 15th and coming back to Tallahassee after Memorial Day to vote on the conference report, according to that memo. The agreed-upon budget allocations total $51.9 billion for Florida, according to the funds listed, and the largest allocations, nearly $20 billion, earmarked for health care and health and human services. And the second largest allocations for pre-K through 12 education, a total of $16.2 billion. And that's America's Talking. Headlines you can find at thecentersquare.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Center Square Daily. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. Now let's put Illinois in focus, where one Chicago police officer is dead and another critically injured after a man allegedly gained access to a gun and shot them at Swedish Hospital on Saturday. CWB Chicago reports an individual in custody, 26-year-old Alfonso Talley, had 2 violent felony cases pending against him, had escaped from electronic monitoring, and was listed as an absconder by the Illinois Department of Corrections. Officer John Bartholomew, 38, was killed, and a 57-year-old officer was hospitalized in critical condition. Talley had several felony convictions, according to CWB. Joining us to react to this story is Republican State Representative Patrick Sheehan, who is also a law enforcement officer. Representative, thanks for taking time. I can imagine hearing another story out of Chicago with violence against law enforcement hits close to the community for police officers. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. I really appreciate it. As a member of our Big Blue family here in Illinois, we mourn a hero in Officer Jonathan Bartholomew, and my thoughts and prayers go out to Officer Bartholomew's family, and my prayers go out to the CPD and the CPD officer who's clinging on to dear life at the hospital. The breaking point is here, Greg. We have a Chicago police officer dead. The brutal consequences of the Safety Act have reared its ugly head with the murder of a Chicago police officer. Democrat politicians have championed this legislation, and time and time again, it has failed. The time is now to repeal the Safety Act.
Talk a bit about some of the provisions in the Safety Act. Again, this is a measure that passed with Democrats advancing it during the COVID pandemic. It included the Pretrial Fairness Act, which essentially ended cash bail across the state of Illinois being the first state to do so. What specifically do you think is leading to not just this story from over the weekend, but months ago, the woman being lit on fire on public transportation by an individual who had a long rap sheet and, felony, still let out of jail to the streets? What specifically do legislators need to focus on to correct those faults?
Well, you've hit it right on the head. We're seeing it time and time again where our criminal justice system is a revolving door, and violent offenders are let out to reoffend and to put more victims in their wake. I think accountability is completely lacking when it comes to the Safety Act. We have judges that are handcuffed, and then we have other judges who are litigating with ideology. So I really urge my Democrat politicians to bring Republicans like myself to the table, and we need to take a serious look. We're back in Springfield. The House is back next week. We need to repeal this act, and we need to get back to the drawing board.
What have those conversations been like with some of your Democratic colleagues? Because when we ask them around the State House, they'll say, yeah, there's some changes that we can make. But, I mean, here we are. We've got 4 weeks left of legislative activity, and we really haven't seen any hearings on this. Are they just providing lip service to those who raise these types of loopholes, or is there a genuine, effort, in your opinion, to actually address these things by the Democratic majority?
Um, I would have to agree with you when it comes to lip service. I know that I've reached across the aisle since I've been there. This is my third year. I have nearly 20 years in law enforcement. We have a former prosecutor, two other law enforcement officers in our caucus. We have firsthand knowledge of how this criminal justice system works and how the Safety Act is impacting us on a daily basis. And there have been slight conversations. We still don't have a Republican in the public safety working group on the Democrat side. We've created our own truth and public safety working group here with the House Republicans, and we've offered legislation to our Democrat colleagues. I believe that they've taken a lot of it under advisement, but whether they're going to act on it, I don't know. But I would say now is as good a time as any. When something like this happens to a fellow member of law enforcement, there's a certain type of anger, but there needs to be something positive that comes out of this. And we have about a month to go in our legislative session, and I really hope that we can do something positive for our residents here in Illinois.
I mean, this is hit close to home in your district as well, Representative. Tell us about the Boss family.
So, well, Jennifer, we know the Boss family. I keep in contact with her. The Balin family is the one that's particularly affected in my district. A 4-year-old little girl is dead. Her parents accused her of murder. She was left unattended from some of the sources that I've heard, and she got a hold of some sort of drugs on a table that were possibly laced with fentanyl. And now they're sitting at home getting credit for time served day for day, and they're still awaiting trial for murder.
It's pretty remarkable, but obviously something that we'll have to keep watching to see if legislators at the Illinois State House take up any reforms that there may be for the Safety Act and the Pretrial Fairness Act. But other big things people are watching, Representative, is the mega projects, and that is something you guys passed before you wrapped up session last week. It seemed to have bipartisan support and bipartisan opposition. What are your thoughts about this bill that gives certain types of large investment projects carve-outs that the regular mom and pops aren't going to be able to take advantage of?
Well, I think this is a good start. I trust that our colleagues in the Senate are going to put in the proper guardrails that protect our residents. And, when it comes back to the House, I'm going to take a second look at it. I mean, we want jobs, we want economic development, we want tax revenue. I don't know why Chicago should be the only destination in the state while the rest of the state is full of well-paved expressways that lead to universities and prisons.
So when it comes to the Chicago Bears, do you think whatever they do to tweak the House bill in the Senate is going to be enough to appease the Bears to stay in the land of Lincoln?
Well, I think there's rhetoric that you've heard from both sides, whether the Bears are going to actually, pull tail and run to Indiana. I think Illinois and the opportunities that we have here in Illinois are far superior to what Indiana has to offer. Like I said, this is a fantastic start. This isn't just about the Bears. This is about bringing economic growth to the rest of the state.
How do you answer to those critics, though, who say this is going to make that small mom and pop shop outside of a mega projects district negatively impacting them because they're not going to be able to take advantage of similar types of tax breaks there may be?
Well, without going too deep into the weeds on, whether you're inside the mega project district or outside the mega project district, I ran hole in my district, which has a lot of space for development. We're in the southwest suburbs, and overwhelmingly, 63% approved of tax incentives for these type of projects. And this is why I said this is a good start from the beginning. This is the vehicle that we put into the Senate. Hopefully, the Senate can put in the proper guardrails. I think there's a little misnomer on both sides when it comes to whether this is going to extremely raise property taxes. I tend to disagree with that, but like I said, I have full confidence that our colleagues in the Senate are going to get this right, and we'll have a second crack at it in the House.
And we'll also be watching closely, Representative, what happens with the budget, right? I mean, May 31st, just around the corner. But we're going to have to save that for another day because there's going to be plenty of activity on a whole host. Yeah,
it's going to be a full sprint to the finish. And if you don't mind, Greg, if I can just put a typo on what we had talked about earlier about Officer Bartholomew. The rhetoric that has come out of the other side of the aisle, especially Democratic leadership from Mayor Brandon Johnson and Governor Pritzker, where Mayor Brandon Johnson has called law enforcement a sickness that needs to be eradicated. We have Governor Pritzker calling law enforcement the Gestapo. Jackbooted thugs, has called for the abolishment of ICE. I mean, all this talk, all this rhetoric sounds a lot like defund the police, and we saw how well that worked out for the Democrats. So I really hope they're serious after a tragedy like Officer Bartholomew, that we get back to the drawing board and actually do what's right for the citizens here in our state.
Republican State Representative Patrick Sheehan, greatly appreciate you taking the time with us here today for the Center Square Daily. And that'll do it for the Center Square Daily. Be sure to join us back here Tuesday for more stories impacting you, the taxpayer, from all across the country. Only right here with the Center Square Daily.